9 o'clock, so we'll call our St. Croix County Board of Supervisors to order. And is Bruce Junkard here today? If he isn't here, we will all stand and have a moment of silence. And then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance now, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Cindy, we'll have roll call, please. Okay. I believe we have 3 missing. We have 2 there.
The computer monitor on this side isn't
It's not working.
active.
They're having problems with that, so it probably won't work today.
Power supply, we had a power surge last week, and so we had 2 of the power supplies inside the units fail.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we have the consent agenda to approve. We have a motion to approve by Supervisor Osnes. We have a second. And Supervisor Schachner seconded. Is there any discussion? We need a second. Did you do your second? He did. Okay, so is there any discussion? No discussion? We'll vote on this then. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. Now we're open for public comment, if we have any public comment. At this time, it's not on the agenda. No public comment at this time. You don't have anything? So, okay, we'll move on. Thank you. Okay. Presentation or recommend, and Pat Thompson will take care of this for us.
Good morning, board members. This is a morning when we will recognize several employees and all well-deserved recognition. It's important for us as a board and as county administration to recognize our employees when they achieve certain milestones or accomplishments in their chosen careers. And this morning we have several. The first group of employees are from the local UW Extension office. And as I call employees, maybe come up and stand next to me to the podium. Joanne Sprain and Erica Mabus. Joanne Sprain, University of Wisconsin Extension, St. Croix County, and Erica Mabus, St. Croix County AmeriCorps Vista employee, who is now temporarily working in the administration at the front counter, recently were awarded the Rosalie Powell Financial Management Award at the Joint Council of Extension Professionals statewide conference in La Crosse, Wisconsin. This award by the Wisconsin Association of Extension, Family and Consumer Sciences is given to a team who has developed an outstanding educational program on some aspect of family financial management. Joanne and Erica helped create a financial education program based on trivia contests and simulated learning activities for college students. Topics covered included paying for college, understanding credit, living within a budget, and understanding money values and goals. I think I'm going to send one of my kids through that program. I think it sounds good. Topics, yes, I covered that. A total of 252 students participated in the program, and they have, it's broken up into 2 different semesters. So on behalf of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors, we'd like to recognize Joanne and Erica for these accomplishments. And we have a certificate both for Joanne and for Erica that have been signed by myself and the County Board Chair, Roger Larson. So thank you very much. Thank you so much. The next group of employees are in our Health and Human Services Department. The Wisconsin Shares Child Care Subsidy Program performance standards were a new contractual requirement established by the Department of Children and Family Services in 2013. I'd like to call up at this time, and I hope I can get everybody's names pronounced right. Charity Aguirre, Laura Dreyer. I don't know if all of them are here. Laura's not here? Okay. Jen Fire Easine? Fire Ace. Wow. Jim Jackson? Jim? Okay. Kathy Leash? Stacy Lutzy? No. They're all working. Angie Magoon? Okay. Cheryl Odell? Hi, Cheryl. Gilbert? Oh, no. Matt Pascarella? Oh. Stacy Schradel? Oh. Jolene Summers? And Pam Vrunk? No. Okay, well, I'm glad we have some of you here. And we'll make sure that why don't you come up too, Rhonda, as their supervisor, and Fred Johnson, the director, is here if you want to step forward, Fred. As I said, the Wisconsin Shares Child Care Subsidy Program established new performance standards for 2013. We're part of the Great Rivers Consortium, which is made up of several counties in this unit of Health and Human Services. And we've always been a leader, in my mind, in that consortium. Work was completed with our state partners to obtain preliminary detailed reports for all the new standards established by the state. Our local supervisor, Rhonda, and lead staff monitored these reports on a monthly basis, and local staff here processed their daily assignments in a very timely manner. This teamwork allowed our agency to score as high as possible where we could have an impact. In addition, St. Croix County staff met the performance measures in the midst of momentous implementation of the Federal Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, PPACA. economic support staff are recognized and commended for their hard work, willingness to overcome and master challenges in an ever-changing environment, and commitment to high performance. So, on behalf of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors and Administration, thank you all very much for your hard work. I'm going to give Rhonda the honors.
Thank you.
There's quite a stack there. And as you saw, several of our staff people couldn't be here this morning, but make sure you pass on our thanks, Rhonda.
I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The next group of employees are from our Community Development Department. 2 employees, actually 3, Ryan Yerington. Hey, Ryan. Pam Quinn and Bonnie Klum. Hi, Pam. Hi, Bonnie. Recently recognized by a local real estate agent, unsolicited, for their hard work converting soil reports to laser fiche on the county's website. This has been an ongoing project and goal for Pam over 2 years, while Ryan has been getting the sanitary reports in laser fiche on the website for even longer. It was very gratifying to know the hard work was well worth it and recognized. And this was, as I said, an unsolicited letter that came in to the county, came through my office, through Ellen's office, just singing the praises of our community development staff. And those of you that have been honored to sit on that committee know what I'm talking about. The neat things that they have been able to do in that department with the website and with the computers and GIS. And when I first relocated into St. Croix County and was looking for a residence to live in, our realtor, Jenny Olson, again, unsolicited, really sang the praises also of our community development staff, and that was 2.5 years ago. But those compliments continue to come in for our staff, and so on behalf of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors, we want to recognize all of you for your work in that area. And at this time, Ellen Denzer is going to come up and say a few words as well. But before that, I would like to give Ryan certificate, Bonnie, and Pam. Thank you. Ellen?
Thank you, Pat. I just wanted to say just a little bit more about Pam. And the reason I do is because Pam has given us her notice that she's going to be retiring at the end of November. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to say just a couple of more nice things. Pam is one of these people who's always looking for a new project, an additional effort, always reaching out and trying to find something she can do to make things better. And she just, one example is several years ago in our office, she saw a need, she stepped in and she started reorganizing files. It was a huge, huge project to take files that were organized by name and change them to being organized by a uniform system based on the location. And yet she tackled it, did it in her free minutes here and there, and just totally made it so much more efficient for the whole rest of the department. And another project she tackled that she got a little less than a year ago, I got a very, very nice email from Dan Bauman, the DNR District Director, thanking me for Pam's efforts on a special project. Down on the St. Croix River, there were 7 cabins on a little bay. And those 7 cabins are really, really old, and they had never had any kind of inspection or any kind of improvement in their sanitary system. And Pam worked with those property owners and worked with them and educated them and talked to them about ways to do things. And finally, at the end, last year, we got the kudos is because all of those sanitary systems were inspected, pumped, and replaced and cleaned up. And all of that was a huge multi-year effort that was actually a pretty important thing to the water quality of our river. And like I said, Pam and the rest of our staff also are just always working really, really hard to make sure they give the best possible service. And just a week and a half ago, I got another email, and I just thought I'd read this little note to you. Over the past month, my wife and I have communicated with several folks from St. Croix County Community Development regarding our new property. As an old retired couple, this has been a journey into the unknown, accompanied by more than a little apprehension. To you and all of the staff, for patience, guidance, and genuine kindness, please accept our heartfelt gratitude. So, again, I just wanted to say that, especially because Pam is leaving us in just a few months. So, thank you.
And then lastly, also part of the Community Development Department, Parks Division, is recognition for Justin Townsend. Hi, Justin. Come on up. I'll refer you to this as I speak. It should have been at your workstation. Justin Townsend is the site director and creator of the Bookworm Trail at Homestead Parklands in Perch Lake. The Bookworm Trail is a No Child Left Inside literacy project that should be completed by the end of the summer. The Bookworm Trail will be a 1/2 mile paved trail with 4 different quiet domains, and I think they're highlighted on that brochure. There will be a new book placed in each section or house of each week. The books will reflect the theme of each station, ranging from classic fairy tale themes to books about birds. Justin indicated that he wanted to build this as a community project to create partnerships and to show that the parks are here for the people. We find out what the community needs, and we try to fulfill that from everything that he has seen through those gaps. There is a summer slump sometimes when kids get out of school and stop reading, and that's what we're trying to fill. Good for you, Justin. With the feedback that I've been getting, or Justin, I think we're doing something that is going to be very useful. So those of you that have not been out to Perch Lake recently, take a look at this, and maybe before the snow flies, visit the park and look at what Justin and the staff have been able to accomplish. What a great idea. So on behalf of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors and County Administration, Justin, we'd like to recognize you for your creativity and your hard work in putting that together. So thank you. Thank you very much. A lot of neat things happening here at St. Croix County in our departments, and this is just a smattering, a small sample of the great work that's being done. Lastly, on a personal accomplishment, not really work-related, but I want to recognize Fred Johnson, our Director of Health and Human Services. I think all of us try to stay in shape, or once in a while we work out, maybe go for, a 5-mile run, or maybe, really crank it up a notch and go out on our bike. Some of us like to swim. Well, let me tell you what Fred did this past weekend. Up in Michigan, he participated in an Ironman triathlon. And he swam 2.4 miles. Then he got on his bike and rode his bike for 112 miles. I can't imagine that. I go out on my bike for 20 and I'm sore. And then after that, he got off the bike and ran 26.2 miles. It took him, I think he told me, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling you this, it took him about 22 hours to do all that. I think I would have fallen asleep. I don't know how he did it. I don't know. But anyway, I don't have a certificate for you, Fred, but would you come up? I do have something for you, and on behalf of our board, we promote fitness here at St. Croix County. Fred has taken it to a new level. And so on behalf of the board and county administrator, I'd like to present you with a box of Bengay.
Thank you, Pat. Now we have appointments. Pat, are you going to do the appointments too?
Okay. We just have one appointment this morning, county board, but it's a very important appointment. It is the appointment of a nursing home administrator. I'd like to forward the appointment of Sandy Hackenmuller of Roberts, Wisconsin. Sandy is educated at the UW-Madison with long-term care administration, an associate's degree in nursing from St. Mary's Junior College. She is licensed in Wisconsin as director of nursing home. She has a nursing home administrator license along with a nursing license and administrator's license. Sandy has over 35 years in the healthcare industry, including positions as director of nursing and nursing home administrator. Sandy was originally hired by the county as the director of nursing at the health center in January of 2013. That time, Sandy also applied for the nursing home administrator position, which was also vacant, as she held an active nursing home administrator license in addition to her director of nursing. In October of 13, the nursing home administrator position became vacant, and Sandy agreed to serve as an interim capacity as nursing home administrator. She has fulfilled the role of nursing home administrator since then with distinction, in addition to serving part-time as the director of nursing for almost 10 months. We are fortunate to have Sandy's leadership at the health center, and I'd like to bring forward her appointment as nursing home administrator. Sandy is here this morning if you have questions for either myself or for Sandy.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Ring?
Yes, I would like to move
Yeah.
to approve the appointment of Sandy Hackenmiller to the director of the nursing home director.
Thank you.
I'd like to second that, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Babbitt, seconded. Now, is there any discussion, any questions? Supervisor Strockner?
So with approval of this, she would become the full-time nursing home administrator. Would that mean that we would have to hire someone to replace her duties as the director of nursing?
I don't believe so. Tammy, why don't you come forward and if there are any.
Good morning. We've had another nurse, Krista Nygaard, who has been assisting half-time as director of nursing. Currently, our nursing home administrator is only budgeted for half-time. I believe in 2015, we should look at making that full-time. So Krista will take over the director of nursing. Sandy will continue on half-time nursing home administrator and half-time like a nurse consultant, which is a title that we've got approved from the state to continue in providing direction to the health center, to all the staff, and to the new director of nursing.
Supervisor Berkey?
Thank you. I was just wanted to have clarification. So is the director of nursing just for the care center or for the other public health nurses
Just for the
and
care
staff?
center.
Just for the care center. Okay, thank you.
Sandy, why don't you stand so people at least can recognize you?
Yeah.
Sandy is, well, I've said it all. She's great. She's great to, she's not only a good administrator, she understands nursing. She's great with the patients. She's great with the staff. We're lucky to have her. So thank you, Sandy, and I look forward to working with you on a big project that we're going to talk about later.
Okay. Any other questions? And we'll Okay. We're ready to vote then. There it is. And it was unanimous. Thank you. And we will move on now to the county administrator's report.
I think I'll just stay here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just a couple items to report on. The first is the financial report that was in your packet. I don't know if you have any questions on that. Didn't see any red flags. Tabitha is here if you have specific questions, but when you get those financial reports, if you have questions of staff in advance of the meeting, don't hesitate to shoot us an email or a phone call. If you have questions you want to address immediately, we're always open for that as well. If there are no questions on that, we have a resolution on our agenda this morning for the issuance of GO debt. I will defer to Joe Murray from Springstead to walk us through that at the appropriate time. But it's really actually quite good news for St. Croix County in terms of the results of the sale, but also the official statement, which is a recommendation or it's a requirement before a municipality issues debt. You have to go through a pretty extensive credit review. We all know when we go to purchase a home or a large piece of equipment, we have to go through a lengthy credit check. Well, when you borrow $10 million, it's very extensive. We did that about 2 weeks ago, and the official statement is a very positive summary of St. Croix County's overall financial position. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at that yet, please do. It's a real good summary of where things stand financially with the county. Secondly, there's been a lot of work done by a subcommittee of the staff advisory group, going through section by section of the HR handbook policies and procedures. And Supervisor Schoberg and Achterhoff are board representatives on those work groups. They've been meeting weekly at 7 in the morning, and then there's meetings in between those official meetings with Roy and Judy and certain staff people trying to go through section by section, and they're doing a thorough job. The work group should be commended. I think the goal is to try to have things wrapped up towards the end of the month, and maybe the administration committee might be in a position to review towards the end of the month. I don't want to make any promises, but they're making very good progress and a lot of good work, and there's a lot of good employee engagement and input into that process. But personally want to thank Scott, Tammy, Roy, and Judy, and the whole group that's working on putting this together. Little bit of an update on the Baldwin Ag Center, the lease. I sent out an email last week saying that we had been contacted by USDA. They had some questions that we needed to respond to. We are in the process of responding to those questions. We had a question of the federal government as well, and they're getting back to us. It's regarding a computer room in the Ag Center. We had some technical questions on that. So there's back and forth dialogue going on, I see this as positive type of engagement. And as soon as I have a final response to that, I'll let the board know immediately. But I think it's a good sign that we're back and forth with some not so major questions, but at least some questions that require some staff time to research. Later on today, the Healthcare Center at 2 o'clock will have a pre-proposal tour and conference meeting at 2 o'clock out at the Health Center. This is to allow for potential architect and engineering firms to tour the center and then ask questions of staff regarding their proposals. And that's at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then later on at 4 o'clock, Phase 2 Communications Project, the Public Safety Communications System Improvement. Phase 2 will open bids for the next-gen 911 phone replacement system. That's for the 911 center. Those bids will be due and opened at 4 p.m. This afternoon. And lastly, those of you that made it to the fair, I believe it was, from all indications, from what I could see, a very successful fair. They even let me in 2 of the barns to judge herdsmanship, and I don't know what this city slicker knows about cows, but I'm learning a lot, and it was a great event. Those of you that were able to make it out to the fair, it was nice. And then lastly, we have the employee picnic on Thursday afternoon, and hopefully as many board members as can make it to the employee picnic. You're all invited to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and unless there are any questions, we'll move through the rest of the agenda.
Thank you, Pat. Are there any questions out there? Dave, Supervisor?
Mr. Thompson, regarding the ag building, do you have any idea when you will be returning the questions?
We've answered the questions that they had. We had a question, and I don't know if John Allegro was here, but it's a technical question regarding phone lines in the IT room, whether or not the phone lines need to be taken out of the equipment room. So there was some back and forth on that.
Yeah, the main lines that come into the building to feed all the phones for the entire building come right through that data center, and we need to find out from them if they're okay with them coexisting with their equipment. If not, we're gonna have to figure out a different place to put their data center.
John, is that something new that they've done that they haven't done in the past? Why I don't understand
The
that.
phone lines, all the phone lines from our phone provider, which I believe is Baldwin Telecom out there, come through the side of that building. So just like they come into your house somewhere, they come through the side of the building into that room, which was the logical place to put our data center at one point. And then USDA is also in that room with us, and we just have to figure out a way to isolate their data equipment if they're not happy with the phone lines coming through there, because I don't think we can move the phone lines.
Okay.
That make sense?
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? If no other questions, we'll move on. Thank you, Pat. Annual reports, the highway, Mr. Ramberg. If I understand right, you're going to do the survey.
Yes,
Crews report.
Brian Holland couldn't make it here, so he asked if I'd fill in, so I'm gonna do double duty, and I'll
Okay.
make it brief. Just some highlights that supplement the documents that you have there. On D as in David, the goals, just wanted to share where we were in 2013 on the goals that we set, that the county board is looking at us to accomplish. And number 1, general maintenance, blacktopping is about 80%. Then chip sealing is about 94% of our goals. And construction is 89% of our goals. And every other year, we inventory and we rate the condition of the system, of about 350 miles of the system. And of course, our vision and our goal is to raise the condition of our system, not only the pavement, but also the bridges. And the pavement is just that, it's pavement. It's not ditches, it's not drainage, it's not the other ancillary things that we consider. And then the state takes those numbers and ranks them based on jurisdiction, maybe not so much jurisdiction, traffic volume and category. And so then we take those rankings and then do our 5-year plan with that. And then bridges are similar to that with the infrastructure. Then on the second page under F as in Frank, I just wanted to share some of our paradigm thinking with regard to when you asked me about budget. I'm going to respond and slingshot back the question, are you talking levy, budget, or expenses, traffic? For us, it's a big difference. The levy is 5.5 million about for the highway department. The budget is about that 16 million or 15 million you see there. But the expenses is about 27 million. And there's a lot of activity behind the scenes with a lot of these cost centers that we track as well for the state and all these reimbursement formulas we have out there. So it makes a big difference as to where we book those and where, what time, how we time that as well. So when you ask me that, or as we move into the budget, our budget's 15, our activity's 27, and our levy's 5.4 or 5.5 range. And the activity that I'm talking about is like pits and quarries. When we crush, that's an expense. When we blast, that's an expense. And when we restore, that's an expense. And when we allocate those rock to the project, that's an expense to the project. So it looks like you're recording it twice, but it's the activity we need to keep track of to see if we're on budget for that project. And then the other thing is our strategy. We have a 3-pronged approach with our strategies. Cutting expenses, which we all look to do, and the one that I'm hot on right now is the federal dollars that come in. When we do an engineering and we do delivery cost of a project, it's typically 10 to 15%. When we use federal money, it's approaching 45%. 45%. So can we streamline that, cut the costs, get those extracurricular activities, those requirements down with the feds? And we're working with the state of Wisconsin to see if we can do that. Cut expenses, stabilize or increase revenues, which we're doing in November. We're going to vote to protect the transportation fund, and that will, of course, will help us. And then any other alternatives there for revenue sources. And the third one that a lot of people don't think about that we like to really work on, and that's change the size of the box. Meaning we have 350 miles of system and 80 or 66 bridges. The size of the box should change based on who has it closer in their heart to take care of that segment of system. Like Stillwater Bridge and all these state projects that are coming on, we will look at to see the jurisdiction, who should own what section. And when they call for a permit, why should they be calling me on a Saturday or bothering you guys for something that maybe should belong to the city? And if they have a parade, let's say, all these little housekeeping things that we'll look at the same time, it's going to hopefully save costs and streamline expenses and expedite issues for the citizens. So that's changing the size of the box. And we have several of them coming on now with the state that we'll be looking at as we move forward. Then the other item on the concerns under H's and Henry is how we budget for our #1 priority, winter. And we budget for 10 significant storms and 30 incidences, and there you've seen how crazy it's been. This last year is 450% of the 10 storms that and we were right on the money with the incidences. But that was a crazy winter, and then the floods on top of that. So that's my highway report. And if I could spill right into the survey one, that's quick as well. On that one, if you take a peek, I just wanted to share the, I won't read it, a lot of it, but if you go to E as an elephant, knowledge sharing, a lot of the things with real estate are behind the scenes that you don't realize. When we go to Towns Association meetings, we ask them, please let us know when you're going to mill up the road or do some road construction that we're not part of, because the monument will be destroyed. And then when the realtor goes out there or some development happens, they can't find it. Now it's quite a hassle factor to find it, and sometimes those get quite costly to replace. So as one of the items to maintain that, that's what Brian and the crew there do as well. And then we share equipment and resources, and we also have, when the development gets more activity in it, we have one of the commercial driver's license holders that will move back and forth based on the priority. Actually, he's one of our plow drivers. And we can move that resource back and forth depending on the workload, which we're really proud of, as a different paradigm on moving through our business. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Supervisor Osmus.
Mr. Ramberg, could you explain to us what an incident is when we're talking storms and incidents?
Okay. A storm is of any significance where it lasts a period of time, like a 2-day storm or a 1-day storm, where an incident would be an ice or drifting in a certain area, or just a slippery spot, because you can have different weather patterns in a 1-mile stretch. You can have blowing snow over the interstate and icy and fine everywhere else. So, and it also depends on where they are in their route. When you have a 50-mile route and it takes 3 hours to get to that route and it's snowing an inch an hour, you're going to have 3 inches by the time you get there. And an incident is beyond that. Accidents, I suppose, too, but there's a list of what those are, and I can think of ice and wind and drifting.
Supervisor Hanson.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ramberg, could you address the cost of last winter, the harsh winter we had, and what are we looking at for next winter? Or do we anticipate having problems with the salt shortage? Is it going to carry over?
Thank you. That's one that I'm pretty worked up with right now. We just opened salt proposals, and at first glance, it's up 178%. And I anticipate about a $325,000 deficit in our winter maintenance. And again, that's a chart that I've shared before where the costs are going like this, and the levy we're trying to keep flat. Another thing we try to do to smooth out those jagged edges. But we've backed off on some maintenance projects to hope cover that, and hopefully we'll back off enough for the 325,000, I think it was, that I projected. And I just took a 10-year average and went at 60-40. We usually spend 60% of our winter maintenance budget in the first half of the year and 40% at the end of the year. So we have an opportunity because our budget one season crosses 2 budgets. So that's why we're able to do that. And that flexibility is paramount with us because the state just got $16 million for their winter, and our intention through the Transportation Committee vision is not to do that to you. We'll come once a year and ask for budget dollars, and in it, we've adjusted the summer maintenance. That's why you'll see all these carryovers into next year where we'll put 1 layer on of blacktop. The second layer will be next year. We're doing that again this year. But we're committing ourselves to next year to certain minimum amount of paving when we do that. So, good question. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Ring.
Could you address the federal transportation fund in this situation and what that means to St. Croix County?
Right now we have a federal project underway right now. It's being audited as we speak. And at the end of June or July here, apparently that's going to run out of money, the federal transportation fund. And we have several projects out there that it sounds like they may do is delay the payment to those. And I can't remember, the Secretary of Transportation, Mark Gottlieb, has a whole list of which ones that he will delay payment to on our reimbursement formulas. For us, they're not grants, they're reimbursement formulas. And these are 80% of eligible costs. And the only eligible cost we have for this is the purchase of hot mix, about $400,000 and some dollars out of a $800 million project. So that's what we would be delayed, is the payment to us on those types of things. So until they hopefully get that taken care of, and sounds like I hear back and forth on where they are with it, and I'm not going to try to guess where they're going to be at then. So thank you. Good question.
Any other questions? Supervisor Berkey?
Question, to take the opportunity while our highway commissioner is here to give an update on those that use 35 coming into River Falls from the town of Troy, the border, with the work that's been done.
Thank you. That's not one of our projects. The state is in charge of that one, and as I get calls on it every now and then I have contacts that I relay them to. So I haven't been as involved in that one, but the state will ask us to help them out in a thin overlay or signing or that type of work, and then we just bill them actual costs. So on that particular one, I'm not as up to speed on as I am the county system.
Sure. I just wanted to point out that Radio Road is being used and signage is up. Radio Road, going west, and the other direction is U. Right?
Correct.
Yeah. And so be sure to, when you come out toward River Falls, to check out the roundabouts. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, U, County Trunk Highway U, not me, you. But County Trunk Highway U will be cut off from 35 shortly, and that's another area that we got to look at. We don't want to terminate a county road. It should end at an equal or higher level functioning road system, and we'll be looking at that as well, the Stillwater Bridge issues. So.
Yes, Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at your goals and objectives for 2014, 2015, I don't see any major items there. Are you comfortable sharing with us what to expect for a tax levy for highway for 2015?
I haven't met with Pat and Tabitha yet on those things. I have ideas and thoughts. Probably quite an increase with the salt and all that. I'm pretty bothered by it right now, so I'm not going to come right out and give a number at all until we cuss and discuss a little bit more. Especially Monday, we're going to be meeting with the Transportation Committee and come up with some vision issues as well. What types of things do we want to look at? We've got a lot of goals out there with our security and all kinds of other things that are going to play into it and what we budget for computer-wise and shops. Our shops are basically sheds, so what we want to do there with our systems, our supporting fixed assets as well. So I really don't have a good feel to throw any numbers out at this time, though. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Tim, for a good report. We're gonna move on into the new and old business. And our first order is a resolution awarding the sales of a $10 million general obligation promissory note, Series 2014A, providing a form of notes and levying of a tax of connection there within. So let's hope the floor is open for discussion on that. Pat, do you want to take that?
Yes, the Administration Committee met this morning and approved a resolution that is before you authorizing the sale of the $10 million of GO notes. Joe Murray from Springstead is here. Joe is the financial advisor from Springstead, who has been working with the county on this issuance. He will present the background and regarding the sale. This is to fund capital improvement projects which have been identified by the county in the resolution. The 911 expansion phase 1, the building, acquisition, and construction of the St. Croix County Services Center in New Richmond, the beginning stages of the demolition of the former facility, phase 2 of the public safety communication systems improvement, and then some deferred 2014 capital improvement projects for a total of $10 million. Joe, do you want to explain the results of the sale?
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I continue to bring more good news, bring smiles to your faces today. As the county administrator mentioned in his report earlier, Since I was before you last in your meetings in May and June, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes in pulling together the sale for the $10 million promissory notes. As the administrator discussed, part of that process was going through the credit rating process through Moody's. I'm pleased to report that the credit rating report that the county received is a AA1, and that is a upgrade from the last time you were in the bond market back in 2010 when you were a AA2. That's a positive step forward. It's a recognition of your strong economic position in the Twin Cities metropolitan district, your fast growth in terms of population. The rating agency was pleased to see that your equalized values and property values have started to rebound. The values across the state and the country took a dip over the last 5 years, but yours are starting to move in the right direction, which was all very positive. You have very strong financial operations and with good fund balance and budgeting. You've also been very fiscally conservative. You have a very low debt burden. As you're aware, the county only has 3 debt issues outstanding. This will be the 3rd, and you're very aggressive in your repayment. Within 10 years, all of your debt will be repaid at this rate. We'll be talking about future borrowings for future projects, but based on the 3 that you have now, you've been very aggressive in having them repaid within 10 years. And that's all reflected as positives, and that's reflected in your upgrade to a AA1 rating. The county administrator and the finance director participated in the call and did an outstanding job in portraying the situation, the financial and economic circumstances going on here in the county at the time, and I think that was all very positive, and you should be commended. There's the AA1, there's only one place you can go that higher, and that would be a AAA. And as I disappointed the county administrator after the rating call when he wanted to get the AAA, the chances of that are slim, I'll be very honest, simply based on your size, population-wise, and your economic, your tax base. It's a little small to try to get the very top rating, but you should be very proud of having a AA1 rating. So that was very good news. The results of that led to our accepting bids on your behalf yesterday, and we received a lot of interest in the issue of the $10 million. We had received 10 bids. Typically, we receive 6 or 7 on the county's behalf, so the strong credit rating, I think, helped provide more interest in it. The more interest you have better competition, and that drove interest rates lower. The low bid came in from Piper Jaffray at a true interest cost of 1.849 or 1.85%. If you recall, when I was here in June, we had projected that the true interest cost would be at just over 2.0%. So we beat the estimates by 15 basis points. The good news, what that means for the county, is that'll allow you to save an interest cost over the life of the notes of just under $107,000. So everything was very positive based on the results. The results were also showed that there was a lot of competition. The second place bid, or the cover bid, came within 2 basis points of the low bid, so they were fighting for it. And even the very highest, the 10th ranked bid, came in 15 basis points higher than the low bid, but that was still lower than we had projected back in June. So all the results were very positive yesterday, and we recommend that the county award the sale of $10 million in general obligation promissory notes series 2014A to Piper Jaffray at a true interest cost of 1.849%. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
This time, I think I'd like to see a motion to approve, and then we'll get into questions. Supervisor Berkey?
I move to approve resolution awarding the sale of $10 million general obligation promissory notes, Series 2014A, providing the form of the notes and levying a tax in connection therewith, and awarding Piper Jaffray and Company as the successful bidder.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Supervisor Novotny seconds. Now, any discussion or questions? No discussion. Supervisor Osmus.
Mr. Thompson, I got a couple of questions for you. On packet page 20, it says that we're going to in addition to Phase 1 and 2 and the HHS Service Center, we're going to add in the jail center renovation, government center parking lot, and information technology upgrades per the IT assessment. Am I correct that at our June meeting, all three of these were in a 5-year capital projects and that they were going to be paid for by undesignated funds? And my question is, why are we going to include those in this bonding?
Tabitha is here as well. They've been identified as placeholders in the 5-year capital improvement plan, but the intent is for the IT upgrades to be funded through the bond proceeds. Jail Central renovation and the government center parking lot are also identified in the 5-year capital improvement plan.
The IT is not in the KIP.
The IT is not?
IT
Okay.
is not, but we put jail assessment and the parking lot in the KIP should bonding run in excess. We try to have some wiggle room both directions. And due to the bonding spend down requirements, we may need to have those items in this bond issuance, and we would use unassigned dollars for additional phase 2 costs or future bonding. Because we have certain parameters we have to meet at a certain timeline, we have to spend down certain percents on the bond.
Just a question of
Supervisor
clarification
Hanson.
then. In the packet, it says that the jail central renovation is included in this bond, and you're saying that it won't be?
It is included in the bond documentation as an item. We can choose to actually expend it out of the bond or to use unassigned general fund dollars. It's an either or item. What I would recommend is that we don't actually put it in the bond, that we use the jail assessment fees to reimburse the general fund. And so the bond, we don't have to, the projects that are in the bond schedule are a general parameter guideline. You don't have to spend each item specifically, as long as it's categorically the same.
Tabitha, are those going to be the only 3 items then, in addition to Phase 1, 2, and HHS, that we're going to be looking at in that bond?
In the new bond, in the bond moving forward,
Yep.
we would look at,
We're not going to add anything to the list that we've got right now, is my
no, the
question.
list will not change. The list as submitted is how we're bonding. It's all the bond documents have been prepared and the issuance and the sale and everything. Those projects are as listed.
Okay. And then the other question I've got is, and it's not really related to the bonding itself, I'm wondering if we could have an itemized line-by-line detail report on what the cost of the service center is within the next 60 days to come back to the board?
We can work on that offline.
Thank you.
Supervisor Nelson?
Can we take money that we have in our little extra fund and pay it towards some of these projects even though they're in the bond? If we're sitting at 42% and we only really need 25 that they figure as far as general money in the fund, instead of putting it in the bond and paying interest on it, pay it outright? Am I coming across correctly? Like if I was doing my budget at home and I had extra money because I worked a little bit more, instead of me taking a loan out to do it, we can pay with that money so we don't have such a large amount of money sitting in another pot to be divvied up.
We've identified the projects in the list as needing $10 million. We have additional projects that'll come before you as part of the 2015 budget. We identified in the 5-year capital improvement plan. We'll use the other money, the general fund unassigned dollars for those projects. So we do need the full $10 million for the project identified, along with additional dollars to fund the 5-year capital improvement plan moving forward.
Are there any other questions? We have a motion on the floor from Supervisor Berkey, second by Supervisor Novotny. And Cindy, could you read back that motion to us?
It was a motion by Berkey, second by Novotny, to approve the resolution as it's titled, and then including awarding Piper Jaffray the bid.
If there are no further questions, we'll vote on this then. Supervisor Osnes. Supervisor Verkey, yeah, there we go. Thank you. And it was unanimous, thank you. We'll move on to the next resolution then. Thank you, everyone. The next one is a resolution approving a labor agreement between St. Croix County and the Wisconsin Professional Police Association, Law Enforcement Employees Relations, WPPA/LEER union for 2013 to 2015. And what I'd like is a motion on that, and then we'll move into discussion. Supervisor Trotner.
I'll move to make a motion to approve the resolution approving the labor agreement between St. Croix County and the Wisconsin Professional Police Association.
Second, Supervisor Brinkman. Okay, now. Okay, the floor is open for discussion. Supervisor Nelson.
I just hope next time it doesn't take this long. Maybe try an alternative method of doing it. Maybe have to keep it in-house to negotiate instead of going outside for a lawyer. Because a year and a half doing a contract negotiations is long. It's too long. It's bad business.
Supervisor Brinkman.
I've been asked to just reiterate my thoughts on this, as I said to the admin committee in our previous meeting. Our county sheriff's department employees took 0 wage increase in 2011, 0 wage increase in 2012. They've been without a contract for 2013 and to this date in 2014. I feel that this contract is fair. I also like the fact that they got a third year involved in it, that therefore 2015 we can now have a cooling off period before they begin negotiations on the 2016. So again, I'd like to thank the people involved with getting this done finally, and I agree with Supervisor Nelson that you know, a year and a half is too long. So it's a fair contract to our employees. It's a fair contract to the county. I would urge you all to vote in favor of this.
Supervisor Rain.
I'd like to follow up on Supervisor Nelson's point. Can you help us understand why it would take all that time? I mean, is there anything that we can proactively do to make that process shorter?
Maybe Tammy would like to come forward and give us some insight on that.
Good morning. You know, it's everyone's intention in negotiations to get to a fast and speedy resolution. It's never the intention to drag it out. We actually had the tentative agreements quite a long time ago because usually the language issues are pretty easy to come to the same terms. The case with the WPPA contract, why it took longer, and it kind of went back and forth mutual, is there was 2 different attempts to negotiate pay for performance with this group, which is a very different type of compensation model. So that involved education, training sessions of the staff, the union having a couple different meetings for them to truly try to understand it. We brought a mediator in that attempted to bring, you know, each side to resolution. We were proceeding towards arbitration in the end. The county discontinued pursuing pay for performance and then just bargained on wages. We began with the initial kind of agreement with the administration committee, got a counteroffer back. So while I agree it's not the desired outcome to have it be that long, it's not completely uncommon. I think that's why we all work together to go ahead and get the third year in so that the entire group can kind of sit down and look at what 2016 should be and looking at the entire county organization-wide. So generally we meet usually about the summer before. And like I said, we had all of the agreements. It really was just longer this time because of the pay for performance discussions.
Any other questions? Supervisor Ring?
Just related to this discussion, so I believe St. Croix County is like the third largest employer in the county. And so this is a big, there's 160 employees involved in this, I understand. What impact, or how will you look at this as we look at, you know, setting compensation for the rest of the county? How do you look at this if this is adopted? What does that do?
And there's actually about 70 employees that are impacted directly by this union agreement, not 160. You know, it's our only group that has the ability to bargain. So the rules are a little bit different for that group in terms of kind of how others use this, other organizations outside, because we could be a comparable for them. I contend that we need to continue to look at our compensation plan as the entire organization and to kind of try to create a consistent compensation format regardless of whether people are bargaining or not. So with the cost of living increases negotiated for 13, 14, 15, while Supervisor Brinkman mentioned that, you know, some other employees or this group did not get any increase in 2011 or 2012, we need to be cognizant that there have not been across the board increases for the entire organization since 2010 for some, 2008 for others. So I do believe we will need to really do some good research and analysis moving forward and factor in when cost of living increases are appropriate. What would we want to look at? Is that the cost of living, you know, the CPI? Is that some other type of, you know, wage adjustment to keep our entire market competitive for all positions?
Supervisor Nelson?
I just got done doing a union contract, took us 4 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And the main thing why we can do it so quick is because we have trust and respect. That's where it all starts. So in future meetings, hopefully, because the frontline guys, the pay for performance doesn't work for that because they're not a based outcome performance thing. They go out there and do their job. They don't know what they're going to get every day. So pay for performance is not a good idea, but it was an ideology that was put out there. So hopefully our goal would be is now that we got a good 3-year contract to make sure that the next contract that you keep it at minimal, because when you have employees worried more about if they're going to be treated fairly, it takes them off of what their goal should be is their job. So I think it's on the county and the administration to make sure that we do not repeat this and that we make sure that there's a good trust and respect coming from the administration towards all law enforcement and all frontline employees.
I agree, and I believe we have that. I do think that's why we come to fairly easy terms. It was from the direction of the last board that we were to pursue the pay for performance, and I think we tried to work with them. And I would say, you know, the sheriff's union was actually open if they could provide some additional input and tweaks into how it would work. They even talked about some pilot programs coming, having a seat at the table, and I think some of the changes that we're going to likely be making in pay for performance for the entire organization may make it more, but yeah.
Supervisor Ring, you had something you wanted?
I do have a question. When you talk about cost of living, is that, I don't think I saw those words in this document. Is that what it's considered, a cost of living increase?
Yeah, well, it's an across-the-board increase, generally considered, people call it a COLA or cost of living. So that's basically what an across-the-board type of increase is generally put in to reflect, to keep bringing up the wages to match the cost.
But you did not tie it to a cost of living measure?
It's not to the CPI specifically, no.
So then we probably shouldn't call it that, I think.
No, I was speaking more in terms of future for the other groups of employees, which is what I thought you were asking about.
Yeah, I wanted to know the impacts, but
Yep.
if, I just.
Yep, sorry,
think we should-
across
no,
the
that's
board
fine.
increase, yep.
Thanks.
Supervisor Berkey?
Comment and then a question. I think, in all fairness, as the two supervisors, Ochterhoff and Schoberger, working with Human Resources and the Staff Advisory, that the compensation plan, the compensation plan may indeed take on different characteristics. I hope that it does, and that it may not be a pay for performance. It may be a different plan that's more appropriate for a nonprofit, which the county is. I just wanted to reiterate that point. I've made that point in some committee meetings. Secondly, my question regarding this contract, were comparables done with, what were the comparables, whether it was Twin City Market, Alto Eau Claire, Pepin Pierce?
There actually was no market analysis done for the bargaining contract because we didn't go to arbitration. Had we gone to arbitration, then we would have determined what those comparables are that the county puts in as exhibits and what the union would have put in as their exhibits, and the arbitrator would work on that. Because we came to a mutual resolution about across-the-board increases, then that's a little bit different. That kind of goes to Supervisor Brinkman. The reason the group asked for kind of the 2%, 1% was because they had had no increase in 11 and no increase in 12.
So when were the last comparables done? Or there have never been any comparable wage studies in the public protection unit?
I'm looking at the sheriff just because it would have been quite a while ago, I would believe. I don't think they were included in Springstead, I don't remember.
No. My best recollection is probably about 10 to 12 years ago the comparables were set. Off the top of my head, it's Pierce, Pepin counties, Jefferson County, I think, over in the middle of the state. Nothing into Minnesota because there were substantial differences done on how compensation went. But the local ones were Pierce, Pepin, and occasionally Pilgrims.
Enough discussion. Are we ready to vote? One question, Ron. Supervisor Kaesler?
Actually, too, is it also true, Tammy, that the law union voluntarily agreed to pay the employees' portion of the Wisconsin retirement?
Yep, in the 2011-2012 agreement, they did. That was part of that, yeah.
So the 21212 is actually a setback from the 6%, 7%, somewhere in there that they absorbed during that same time period that they weren't getting increases.
Yep, same kind of percentages as other employees, although public safety was not immediately required to pay it like the general municipal. That's correct.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The other is, I had asked it at the admin committee and didn't get a response, not because I don't think you wanted to give a response, but needed some time to look into it, is that the union, my understanding, would prefer that the back pay be in a separate itemized check, not rolled into a standard payroll period, and wondering if we have an answer on that as to whether or not we can do that.
Yep, and my understanding from talking to the finance director is that actually will be easier as well for them because they do have to go back and kind of correct WRS contributions, so it will be processed on a separate check. We usually paid on Thursdays. I think it will be like a Friday following, and they'll be able to then see their adjustments.
Thanks.
You will.
No further discussion? We can vote on this issue then? Thank you. And we had a motion, Supervisor Schachner, second by Supervisor Brinkman. Cindy, do you have the motion read back, please?
It was just a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to vote? And it was unanimous. Thank you. We have another resolution in front of us here to approve the request to increase part-time behavioral health nurse to full-time. And we need to probably come from the Health and Human Services Committee. We have a Supervisor Babbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to propose that we move ahead with the resolution to approve the request to increase the part-time behavioral health nurse to full-time.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'd like to second that.
Supervisor Kiesler. Any discussion? Supervisor Babbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While this is not a major budgetary issue, from my perspective, this is a very important issue to get resolved. Behavioral health has been operating without this very important position for much too long, in my opinion. We've had some difficulty in recruiting at the part-time level, so to make this a full-time position is very important, so we can be sure to fill that as quickly as possible. I understand from talking with Fred Johnson, HHS department head, that we've already had some interest in the full-time position, so I think this will help us move ahead and get this position filled.
Thank you. Any other questions? Other questions?
Ron, could you put your second in, please?
We had a motion by Supervisor Babbitt, a second by Supervisor Kiesler, and I guess we're ready to vote. So. And that was unanimous. Thank you. We're moving on to item 4, resolution to approve budget amendments for county positions and new health center building and renovations. Do we have I probably can't, do I have a motion to approve that resolution? Supervisor Hanson?
I would move that we approve the funding resolution as it's written.
Second by Supervisor Babbitt?
Yes,
Second.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Osnes.
I would like to amend the resolution. On line 26, it's just a typographical in there. I think we need to eliminate or delete S in department. On line 27, after health center building, comma, delete and. Line 28, after existing building would be comma. And we need to add assisted living, comma, and dementia unit.
Do I have a second to that, the amendment?
I'll second that
Schobert?
amendment.
Seconded. Do I have any discussion? Supervisor
Could you read that?
Hanson?
Read that through one more time, just cleanly, so I can understand it,
Can you
please.
read that back? Supervisor Osnes?
On line 26, Mr. Hanson, it'll read, whereas the administration department, so I'm removing S. On line 27, it will read health center building, comma, delete the word and. Line 28, after existing building, comma, assisted living, comma, and dementia unit. And those two will be added.
Supervisor Berkey?
If the question having to do, Osnes, Supervisor Osnes, is to make it more comprehensive to include also the assisted living and dementia area?
Yes, so everything's all inclusive.
Sounds like a good idea.
With the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Tabitha?
just clarification, the reason why it's administration departments with an S is that administration is the county administrator's office. The administration is IT, facilities, finance. So that's why I had administration departments, because it was a collaborative effort. That's why the S was there, just to clarify. It wasn't just Pat and the health center department individually. It was a collaboration of a group or a team that came up with that. So that's why I had the S.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I'll make a motion to further amend by striking that removal of the S and putting it back in there.
I'll second the amendment to the amendment.
I'm getting confused.
So you're voting, so you're discussing the amendment on the amendment first.
Right.
Put the S back.
Right. In defense, Mr. Chairman, in defense of the amendment to the amendment, what we're talking about is allowing the word line 26, the administration departments to remain plural. As Mrs. Hanson's comment goes, there were multiple departments involved with the planning of this, and we need to recognize them if we're to be accurate in this motion. Therefore, what Roy's motion, which I've seconded, is to just leave that plural. So what we'd be voting on first would be the motion to retain the S, which would leave that plural. And I support that.
So we are getting confused.
So you're,
What?
if there's no discussion, then you vote on the amendment.
Change it. Is there no discussion on the change amendment to the amendment? Is there any discussion on that? And I believe we had Supervisor Schoberg and Supervisor Nelson for the second. And so.
Hanson.
What?
Supervisor Hanson.
Okay. So we'll vote on that first before we go back into the amendment. This is getting confusing. The reason, what? Yeah, the reason to sustain Supervisor Nielsen? Or Nelson?
Yeah, it seems pretty insignificant to me. I just don't feel that I need to vote.
I couldn't hear what you said. Could you state that?
It just seems to me that the amendment and the amendment to the amendment are frivolous and unimportant.
He has the right to not.
Okay, that's fine then. So it passed with one abstaining, so we'll move back now to the original amendment from Supervisor Hanson.
No.
Babbitt, is there any discussion on that? From Osnes to Schoberg, okay. Is there any discussion on that now, the amendment in front of the committee? Supervisor Nelson.
Could Supervisor Osnes just say the whole line through, and then we can follow it right through with the S?
With the S this
With
time.
the S, and then we'll be able to follow right along, then we'll know exactly what it is.
All right. Starting in line 26, whereas the administration departments and health center department have identified a need for funding for the planning and architectural design for the new health center building, comma, delete the word and, renovation of existing building, comma, assisted living, comma, and dementia unit, period.
Yeah. So you left the and out there again? That clear to everyone now?
You didn't mean to say period at the end, you meant to say
Yeah, yes. We don't need an amendment to the amendment on that.
Okay. Okay. Oh, my. Is there any further discussion now before we vote? Everybody comfortable with that? Okay, then we'll vote on that. That was a motion by Supervisor Osnes and seconded by Supervisor Schoenberg. So. Yes. You gonna finish yours?
Oh, sorry about that.
One abstaining and, okay. And it passed with one abstain, Supervisor Nelson. Okay. So it passed, we'll move on.
Mr. Chair, when you say the name, it's Nielsen, and I'm Nelson. So I want to get confused, because in a couple of years, that might mean something when I'm out knocking on doors. So it's Nelson with common spelling.
Yep. Yep. We'll do that. So
are we back to the question of adopting the resolution with the amendments?
yes, we're back to that question.
If I might ask that our IT director come before us to give us some background on the positions within the IT department that are being requested, Chairman.
So, okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're requesting 2 new positions for the IT department. One of them, we talked about this at the administration committee, we were there, is to shore up our service desk and our desktop support staff, which has been stretched pretty thin for a while now. The second position is to bring in a systems architect, engineer to help guide us through some major projects that have stalled and to bring other projects further planning stages and to run them past departments. They'll act as a project manager, a departmental liaison, and will lead and direct lower staff. And they will also help eliminate the need for our dependency on consultants that we spend a lot of money on right now. So some of their salary will be directly offsetted with money that we're spending on consultants currently. Any questions? Thank you.
Supervisor Osnes?
I've got a question for Jim, our facilities director.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm wondering if you could explain the part-time custodial position, please.
Yes, the part-time custodial position we're asking for the SC is to supplement my full-time custodian that's there, and then also provide observe and report, if you will, of the lobby area. Because the building is open late on Monday through Thursday, this person would be taking care of the front of the building and doing the additional things that my full-time person is unable to get to because of the size of the building. So they would maintain the cleanliness of the building as well as also maintain the appearance of the lobby as it currently is. So,
Jim, and before we moved, we had one custodian up on top of the hill for the HHS area? Is that correct?
correct. We did have one.
Did we have anybody after 5 o'clock? A custodian for HHS after 5 o'clock?
At the old building,
Right.
he worked third shift, and he's working third shift in the new building. So we didn't have anybody in the gap there.
And I guess that's my question. If we didn't have somebody there up until the point we moved to the new building, why do we need to hire a new part-time person?
The cleanliness of the building is not going to be able to be maintained by having one person handling the cleaning. Brady, the current custodian, is a wonderful worker. He's efficient, and the amount of square foot that he's supposed to clean is more than what one person would actually be able to. In the old building, we were letting some things slide because we were moving, and we also pulled a custodian from there to fulfill a position on this end over here. So we were letting things go and supplementing as needed at the old building before we built the new building. So we had 2 people there originally. We moved one here because of a position opening. And by doing so, we supplemented him part-time through just by helping out, so.
I gotta be missing something.
Okay.
In the old building, we had 64,000 square feet.
Correct,
We're into 27,000 square feet.
correct.
So how are they cleaning more square footage in 27,000 square feet versus 64,000?
He's responsible for the full building now. Before, we were supplanting him with help from our daytime staff, would help him do his job at the other building. So we had 2 people there nonstop to do the extra items that needed to be done, the cleaning, the deep cleaning, the windows, so on and so forth. But this position also is going to take the place of having, say, a security person or somebody there sitting at the reception window. This person will be producing work, so they'll actually be doing something that's beneficial to the county.
Is this gonna go full-time next year?
I don't plan on it going full-time ever. This would be a strictly deep clean, and then the supplement for, instead of having a security guard.
Okay.
Supervisor Hanson.
Sir, with regard to the security function, what hours are they going to be doing security? And with regard to the nature of HHS, is there any perceived threat or real threat that would put a person who's a custodian in? And I'm just saying, my observation of people who are custodians is that they tend to be and I hate to stereotype, but a very gentle type of person. And if you have a situation where a person is required to be a security, it's an opposite type of personality as, say, a sheriff's deputy. Are we putting a person at risk by asking them to do that job?
No, and I'm certainly not looking for a security type person either. The presence is what I'm seeking, is to have a presence in the front lobby area. The behavioral health staff, they see a wide variety of people with personalities and issues. There's no reason for us to have something that could entice them to do something else. So this didn't come as, I came up with the idea on my own. I was speaking with the director, and then also with Steve Kurt, who on the behavioral health side, and to have somebody there and just have a presence. And again, this person isn't doing security. He's cleaning, and if he notices something, he would not intervene. He would simply dial 911.
Right, and I don't mean to criticize. Please don't misunderstand that. I commend you for wanting to have somebody there, a presence. I just was concerned that we don't put that person in any kind of, expect them to put themselves at risk.
Yeah,
That's
I would
all.
never do that.
Supervisor Keister.
As these are all rolled together into one resolution, and I believe that the court has very valuable positions to discuss, I'd just like to have a couple minutes for them to come up. I see we have a couple judges at the back and speak on behalf of the importance to the court support, if that's okay. We've had representation from the other positions. I think it's very important that we hear from the judges. Thank you.
I was hoping to avoid having to talk, but in any event, I'm Scott Needham. I'm one of the judges upstairs, and as you know, we're requesting to make 2 part-time positions full-time with regard to the clerk of courts position, and I apologize to the members of the administration committee because what you're going to hear is going to sound very familiar to what you heard a few weeks ago. If you've not had the opportunity, I would encourage anyone to go up and sit in that office for a portion of the day. They are extremely busy. The nature of their work is detailed and exacting. They can't make mistakes. We're dealing with people's liberty, due process, families, and oftentimes significant dollars. Unfortunately, we've also had turnover in that office because of the demands of the position. And when something else becomes available that's less demanding, less exacting, we find that people post out. They go to another position. A phenomena that I've certainly recognized in my 20 years, which I celebrated last Friday on the bench, is the increase in pro se litigation, people who represent themselves. In family cases, I would guesstimate we're probably close to 75% of people who do their own divorces. And these aren't always simple divorces. These are divorces with children, divorces with property, divorces with pension plans. And the clerk's office is the one who is tasked to navigate them through the system. They don't give legal advice, but they certainly direct and provide information. We have become a system of forms, and we have a committee of state judges who develops forms, but the nature of the law isn't always conducive to a form. And so again, the clerk of court's office is asked to help people navigate through what are very complicated rules as well as laws. You added an assistant DA for drug prosecution, and we commend you for that. Drugs are a significant issue in St. Croix County. But understand that when you add a full-time district attorney, that will increase the number of cases that are filed that go to the clerk of court's office that ultimately end up in the courts. Drug cases tend to be complicated cases. They oftentimes involve searches and seizures, and those generate then motions as well as many hearings. Keep in mind also that the clerk of court's office staffs the courts and staffs the court commissioners. So at any one day, we have 6 full-time people who are not in that office but are in the courts or in the court commissioners' hearing rooms. Those same 6 people have desk responsibilities in the clerk of court's office. They're just not a courtroom clerk. They have a desk responsibility. And so we're asking to basically create a full-time position from what now is a half-time position for all of those reasons. Judge Vlack, I think, can talk to you about the half-time position in the Register and Probate's office. I'll just mention a couple of things. Again, the probate office deals with the most sensitive issues of life: guardianships, probates, mental commitments, CHIPS proceedings, juvenile delinquency proceedings, and that office has not had an increase since 1971 other than a half-time position, which we received 2 years ago, quarter time, to help out in that office. Likewise, pro se, people doing things themselves is now the rule. Probates, people come in, they want Erica to give them the form, show them how to do things. A CHIPS proceedings where we're taking people's children out of their homes. People aren't represented. The public defender does not appoint attorneys for parents in CHIPS proceedings. So they're coming in, they're concerned, they have questions. If we have 2 courts in session, we don't staff that office. We put up a sign that says the office is closed, we'll be back in whatever timeline we think might be at play. By adding a half-time position, we'll now have a full-time staff position, so 3 full-time people, hopefully to serve the public, which is what we all are about as a system. In addition, that staff person also assists with the juvenile treatment court, critical service that St. Croix County offers. We're unique in the state. I believe we are the only juvenile treatment court in the state of Wisconsin. We used to staff it with a full-time social worker from the Department of Health and Human Services. For a variety of reasons, that staff person was eliminated, and now we're trying to staff it with a half-time person doing that job. There's also the task force that has been newly created, and our intention would also be to have that person assist with the drug task force, which is recognized by the county. So again, we don't come to you unless we need it. And as I said to the administration committee, the pleasure of working in St. Croix County is the level of cooperation that we have with the county board. We communicate, and when we need something, you generally have been receptive to our requests. That is not the environment in many other counties throughout the state. In talking to my colleagues, they don't have a good relationship with their county board. So I appreciate first the time as well as the attention to this, and we wouldn't be here asking for it unless we needed it. So if you have any additional questions, or Judge Vlack or Erica Nelson or Christy Severson, who is our acting clerk of courts, are also here, I would certainly entertain them.
Are there any other questions for the judges while they're here? Nothing? Thank you.
Chairman.
Are there any other questions? Supervisor Schoberg.
You probably don't want to hear from me again, but Mr. Ostness, in his amendment, captured a correct change that should have been made to the whereas clause. There's a similar change, and it's actually more important to be placed in the therefore clause. So I would move that Supervisor Ostness's amendment language be similarly placed on page 48, where the words appear to authorize expenditures for the planning and architectural design for the new health center building, and that's where we would then insert that similar language again. So if you can see that on page 48, it's as important, if not more important, in the therefore clause as it is in a whereas clause. So my motion is just to insert similar language in that second reference point.
So you want that assisted living and dementia in?
Correct.
Back there in the administration department, health, that area, is that what you're talking?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have?
I would second that motion with much appreciation to Supervisor Schoberg for catching that. I think that's a very important addition.
Supervisor Nielsen.
I don't think we can make an amendment to a motion or an amendment we already voted on, but if I could suggest that maybe we can have Mr. Solberg suggest a friendly amendment, and then we have the individual moving the resolution and seconding the resolution to accept that as a friendly amendment.
Council, I'll do what you request.
I guess, Mr. Chair, I see this as a separate amendment, so it should be moved, seconded, and voted on. I don't know that it can be a friendly amendment at this point.
Okay, so with the motion on the floor then?
And I'll stay with the motion as presented.
Excuse me?
I'll stay with the motion as I presented.
Okay. So now let's get this straight. So I'm on board with it. So Scott, I need your help a second. So we have the original motion. So we have a motion on the floor and a second by Supervisor Schoberg, and Supervisor Babbitt seconded it. And that's to add that amendment back in to state the same thing Supervisor Osnes had with the assisted living and dementia back on page 48. And it's open for discussion. No discussion? Then we're ready to vote. So we'll vote on this amendment. One abstained, and otherwise all in favor, so that passed. So now we can go back
To the original.
what?
Back to the resolution.
We're back to the main resolution with amendments. So I'll have Cindy read that back to us so we know exactly what we're. Supervisor Rain.
Comments and a question. One is, thank you. So on this, let's see, we voted on the amendments.
On the amendments.
Okay, yeah.
So we're doing.
So,
now with
yeah,
the
so I have a
amendments.
discussion
Now we're
on,
back
as
to
the motion as it stands. One, will we be reimbursed for the architectural design fees and as part of the bonding process? How will that affect our budget? So we're taking it now, it'll be a hit on our budget.
It's a budget amendment. It will hit the 14 budget. When and if the board adopts a enabling resolution to reimburse the general fund for capital expenditures for the nursing home or for the health center project, at that time, the board may choose to reimburse the general fund for this expenditure, but at this point, it's a 2014 budget amendment. It'll be taken out of the 2014 budget.
Okay. I have a couple other questions too. So I'm in support of these positions, but it raises a question to me, and it's a question I've raised before in similar setting about capital improvements. I really like what we've done, so I'm drawing a similarity with the capital improvements we've done. I don't like, one of my questions when we would do a onesie, twosie, it's like, well, what's behind door number 2 and what's behind door number 3? So with all of these positions, and I think there has been pent-up demand. I'm recalling a conversation with Supervisor Thompson after our last budget decisions, and the conversation was about, well, what are the toughest things that you, as the administrator, had to look at? And one of his comments, I think he had 3 things. One of them was, there is so much demand. We do have a pent-up demand for all these positions, and it is going to hit it sometime. So I'm seeing it hit. But is there a way that we could have something similar to what we did with the capital improvements? Is there a staffing plan that we could see? Because is there some kind of a staffing plan where you anticipate over the next 3 years what the positions might be needed? So we're just not operating in a onesie-twosie situation. Related to that is, what is the vetting process for these? It was very helpful to hear the comments behind these, and I'm sure you hear all kinds of those things. What is the vetting process for these new positions? Is it part of the budget process? Do you do it all the time? So
The normal process for position approval comes through the annual budget. These are mid-year adjustments for staffing. The 2 IT positions, those were, we can't pin that on Mr. Allegro, the new IT director. These positions were identified in the IT staffing assessment that was done prior to John Allegro's arrival. So those needs were identified a year ago in terms of IT staffing. The other positions, working with the courts and Health and Human Services, those, when we meet with department heads in terms of budget preparation, Tammy participates in those meetings from HR. We talk about staffing needs. So we try to look at long-term, more than just 1 year out. What are your potential future staffing needs? So we do have those discussions as part of the budget preparation. We don't really have a 5-year staffing plan like we do for capital improvements, but we do have those discussions with departments. But these are, as I said to Judy Whiff from the newspaper, the bar is pretty high for mid-year adjustments and for staffing. Normally we'll put these decisions off until 2015's budget, but we felt that they, for good reason, they rose to the top in terms of overall staffing needs that needed to be addressed immediately and not wait till 2015. But this is not the norm. This is not standard operating procedure to bring in staffing requests mid-year, but we felt they were important enough to bring them to the board's attention.
Supervisor Nielsen.
I am opposed to this resolution, but I do want to say to the judges present that I recognize how hard they work and how hard their office works, and I do much appreciate that. I'm one of those that don't believe that a budget surplus needs to be spent before the year end. My feeling is that new positions should be put into the next year's budget unless it's an emergency. I am not at all convinced that these new full-time positions are emergency situations.
Thank you. Supervisor Berkey?
If I could speak on behalf of Supervisor Nielsen's comment, I think if we use as an example at least one of these departments, and I don't think in response to Supervisor Ring, sometimes we can do a plan, a staffing plan, but other times there are programs that come up or a situation, whether it has to do with the drug court situation or other, we can have a plan, but I don't think we stick fast to it because things do change. But I think it's a good question. But I wanted to point out in the IT department, and most of us are aware of this, that in the last 4 months we've lost 3 of 8 people from the IT department, and it's not due to retirement. There have been untenable workloads, inability for time off due to staffing shortages. I think in many situations in IT, also there's lack of kind of openness and fairness in some of the advancements. I see that clearing up. John is doing a good job. He has a good rapport with his staff and with the administration department, others in the administration department. This department I am using as an example partly because I know that Supervisor Nielsen, your work history has been in IT. We have expected the unexpectable from these folks, and I very strongly support all of these positions, not only in IT, but in the circuit court. The custodian position I'm a little bit concerned about because it sounds like it's a custodian / security position, and I think really it's probably a custodian position, but I guess I would just be careful about that. So I support these positions, and not that it is going to be a, I think it is an exception to the rule. I think we do need to do better planning, and I think we need to be more proactive in terms of situations that come up in departments. And again, I'll talk about the IT department as the example. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion before we get into, if we're going to vote on this resolution? We have 2 amendments to it. It was motioned by Supervisor Hanson, seconded by Supervisor Babbitt, and we had 2 amendments. The one was on line 27 with a comma and 28 with a assisted living and dementia, and the same thing was back on page 40 where we added the same language there. Is there anything else we had in it? So if everybody's clear on what we're voting on, we'll vote if there's no problems. ready to vote. I haven't heard anybody say they. We have one no and the rest are yes, so it's passed. I'm going to ask everybody if they'd like a short recess now. We've been here for a couple hours almost, so if everybody's in favor, we'll take a, let's make it 5 after 11, everybody be back. Thank you. Supervisors, we're going to start our meeting again. Oh, I got a hint.
We'll see in a little while how far you really are. That's why. Yeah. 0 or pay for performance. Nice.
Your supervisor present. Present. Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Get over here, Jimmy.
He's swinging that hammer at me, Cindy.
That's right. We're going to come out of our recess and we're going to move on to another resolution here. We've got, we're going to move down to number 11 because we have some people here from Troy. So we're going to, resolution of the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors approving creation of the Town of Troy zoning ordinance. So we're going to move on to that. Oh. And I don't, what? Yeah.
I'm gonna move. Yeah, I wanna.
And Supervisor Oss has made a motion to approve.
If I could second that, Chair?
Supervisor Berkey,
Yes.
you have a second?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on that? We should probably,
I just have
Okay.
yes.
I just also wanted to note that our town chair, Dan Pearson, is here, as well as Supervisor Jan Kusha, and also the attorney for the town of Troy, Gwen Kashever. So if need be, they're available to make some comments. I would like to give that opportunity.
Okay. You want to speak on that?
Yes.
Okay.
I was asked, and I want to clarify an issue, or regarding an issue. So last year, October 1, the county board did what's called a comprehensive revision of its zoning ordinance. And the comprehensive revision was essentially creating 2 zoning districts and eliminating 2 zoning districts that were ag-related, among some other changes. So when a comprehensive revision takes place, in this instance, the towns will have a year to either decide to zone themselves, opt out, or they can adopt the comprehensive amendments and remain under county zoning. So in this instance, the town of Troy, because of the comprehensive revision, has decided to zone itself, and so that the old ordinance runs for 1 year from the date of adoption, so it runs until September 30th. The county essentially will transfer
authority or jurisdiction over zoning with the effective date of the town's zoning ordinance if you approve of the zoning ordinance. So jurisdictional authority will be transferred at midnight on the 30th of September. So that's, so that's when the transfer will actually occur.
Supervisor Ring.
I'd just like to give a little bit of background. The town of Troy has been in conversations for over a year, I think, with the county, with our community development division and the planning professionals. They've gone back and forth. You've seen in the packet that there's been a lot of conversation and questions. I know the town of Troy has worked really hard and to make a distinct, to make their ordinance distinctive and one that they can fully support. So this is, it's the third township in St. Croix County that will have, if this is adopted, its own zoning ordinance. And related to that, whenever there are changes, they do need to come, so the adoption needs to go through this body, and also any future changes in either the narrative or the zoning maps. And we've seen that over the last couple of years. So they've done all the right things. There is, they have adopted their comprehensive plan. They had a public hearing. We also had a public hearing. The people who spoke were are the people who are here today. It seems like it's very supported by the community, and it was recommended by the Community Development Committee to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any questions? Supervisor Osmus.
Scott, in our resolution, do we need to notate the date that you were talking about?
In my opinion, no, because the ordinance, the old ordinance remains in effect, and if you look at the attachment from the town of Troy, the effective date on their ordinance or their proposed ordinance is October 1. So in my opinion, it's not necessary.
Okay, thank you.
President Nelson.
I got a question about zoning. When a county has a zoning rules and a township adopts their own, do they take the more stringent of the two zoning rules to follow? It's just a clarification in my mind, so I'm probably thinking we're gonna be seeing more of this come down the road if townships have an idea of what they wanna do. So when I read something, I kinda have the idea that if there's a county zoning ordinance compared to what they're suggesting that their ordinance is gonna be, does the more stringent become applicable?
Well, in this, the answer is no. So under different scenarios, either a county zones the particular township, or the town elects to zone itself or it's unzoned. There are not competing zoning ordinances between the county and the town itself. Because of the comprehensive revision, it allows the town an opportunity out of the county ordinance, and therefore they can develop their own, but they're not competing ordinances.
So basically, whatever they decide in their township, that's what they have to live with.
That is correct.
Supervisor Ring.
But just as a point of clarification, there are some elements that we think of often as zoning that are not, that the county retains control of. And some of those are, it's the shoreland ordinance, for example, is the county's, let's see, there are some other things that aren't coming to my mind.
Subdivision.
Subdivision ordinance, land division, non-metallic mining, shoreland, flood plan, riverway, animal waste ordinance. So the county still retains those powers.
Any other discussion, questions? If there are no further questions or discussion, we can vote on this resolution for the Town of Troy ordinances. We had a... Yep. We're ready to vote. And it was unanimous, all yes, so it passed. Thank you, everyone. We will move back up to number 5 now, which is resolution to discontinue further study of the merger Pierce St. Croix County PSAP. And I need a motion from that from the floor. Supervisor Brinkman's motion from Supervisor Brinkman. Do I have a second? Okay. Lots of seconds. Supervisor Nelson, second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Brinkman, yes.
Since everyone's looking at me, I feel like I can speak. I'll just reiterate what I said at the last public protection meeting. The way it was presented to us is that we have to go through a series of gates, and each one of these gates becomes more and more expensive. It appears to me that we have stumbled out of the very first gate on this in regards to the fact that we are willing to put money into this, but Pierce County was not. I do believe that it takes two to tango, and our partner in this does not seem to want to financially support this cause. Therefore, I see no reason to have us continue to put resources towards such a venture. In the public protection meeting, we also heard from various department heads who gave their opinion of it, and this is a conclusion we as a group came to unanimously. So with that, I strongly endorse this.
Thank you. Any other?
But Mr. Brinkman, Supervisor, you would be supportive of non-duplication of services, and I am just troubled that the effort stalled. I understand the reason, it's economic, and I hope that this message that it's a wise thing to do gets to our state offices and that they can perhaps grease the skids a little bit so the further study and implementation of this might be financed as a state purpose.
Supervisor Nelson?
Yeah, it was an interesting thing from one who works operationally in the emergency services field. And I just didn't wake up one morning and said, I'm against this. I talked to a lot of people who work in the job, and finances is one thing, but when you're trying to do efficient things with a business like dispatching, being efficient could be the difference between life and death. So to me, it wasn't a financial thing really, but yes, it was, because I don't think we would have got the bang for the buck that we wanted to do. But operationally, when you have the frontline individuals, the sheriff and the emergency communications director is not supportive of it because they think it's not going to help our frontline people. I'm trying to paraphrase how I thought they said it during public protection, that they're the ones we should listen to. Because if we can't listen to them about what's best for the people that are in the front lines, then we're not doing them a just service. So I'm fully supportive of Supervisor Brinkman's leadership in this, and I applaud the rest of the Public Protection Committee because we had a good discussion on it. And I hope that everyone else is in support that this is something that's not good for the county employees, and that maybe someday if the state decides to do it, that's something that they can look at somewhere way down the road. But being first in some things doesn't mean it's really a good thing.
Supervisor Berkey?
I have a question for clarification, or maybe it is something down the road to look at. With respect to the largest population center in Pierce County, which is River Falls, of which 2 wards are in St. Croix County, how does that, and maybe Supervisor Brinkman can answer this, how does that play out? Or is there a possible relationship or partnership down the road with the city of River Falls and not the rest of Pierce County?
Supervisor Brinkman?
I'm going to defer that to our emergency communications director, Mr. Swetlick. He has a much better grasp on that.
I think that's a very good question. I think that's a question for the future. I believe this resolution wouldn't stop those types of discussion. River Falls is now split between two masters, so to speak, Pierce County and St. Croix County, from a dispatching standpoint. So it's very possible for one side to absorb the majority of dispatching. Right now, the city of River Falls is dispatched primarily by Pierce County. There seems to be a desire by the city of River Falls to look into alternatives for that approach, that being St. Croix County. Unfortunately, rural Pierce County, which is still serviced primarily by River Falls Fire and EMS, would need to be dispatched by Pierce County, because when that 911 call is made from that rural home, you have no idea what the intent is. You don't know if they need a sheriff's deputy, police, or fire, or EMS. So that call needs to be routed to Pierce County, and then forwarding those calls creates a lag time and an opportunity for failure. So they still will have to be serviced by two masters, but the majority of their calls, that being the city proper, could come up to St. Croix County, but discussion would need to certainly be introduced related to the demand. One other thing I'd like to mention is we've come out of this with some positives. At 4:15, as Administrator Thompson mentioned, we're opening our phone bids, and Pierce County will have representation in that process. When they're ready, we could go on our phone system and create that partnership instead of each county purchasing separate phone systems for their 911 centers. We're getting those types of systems in which we can partner, and I think one of those takeaways from this merger was that type of partnership that's currently in place. So.
Supervisor Rain?
I appreciate all the work that's been done by the committee. I appreciate that it was explored. I am disappointed that we couldn't find a way to partner. I don't know that merger was what it had to be, but partner. I think we are in this for the long haul. I mean, if we look at 20 years, I'm delighted to hear what I just heard, that you've got a scalable system that Pierce County could add on to. As I understand it, when we first had this discussion, some of the counties around us were they're at different stages of the game. I would hope to continue the dialogue, whatever that is, among the emergency services entities, at least our neighbors. Does that happen now? I mean, are you talking in any kind of, to always look for these opportunities? We're spending $5 million here, or plus. We have, there's staffing that might be duplicated, and for each of us to have a little fiefdom, couldn't we, I think we should continue the search and continue the dialogue to find ways to partner. Maybe it's not merge, but partner and get the best service and have some economies of scale. So there is a question in there. Do those dialogues happen with our neighboring counties? And if they don't, is there a way that they could?
Yes, they do, to answer your question, and they have occurred for many years that I've been in this line of work. Right now, however, what's happening is technology is catching up with the need for it, and the ability, like in our phone system, to partner is new. Previously, it was everybody had their own separate equipment, but we're getting over that hurdle with the technology influx. And perhaps Supervisor Babbitt will understand this more than the rest. It's like, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Just one, but that light bulb has to want to change. And unfortunately, that's the stumbling block we encountered here. There was a significant amount of end-user resistance from the Pierce County side, and also some from St. Croix. A lot of that is an educational opportunity, but the security blanket that people put on 911 centers was very clear and evident. And one of the things that our consultant mentioned from the very beginning, you need champions on both sides in order for this to occur. You can't shove it down anyone's throat. It just needs to have champions on both sides, and that was where we lacked. We just didn't have that across the border. The infrastructure that you talked about with our investment, that will occur regardless. The need to make sure that all of St. Croix County is covered with infrastructure is separate. It's a separate problem for St. Croix County that couldn't be absorbed through a merger or a partnership. So we have our own needs in which we're meeting, of course, through your support, but that partnership, like you spoke of, can address the duplication of services. The personnel could come together, but the mindsets have to come together, not only from the end users, but the elected officials as well, including Madison.
Could I ask you, do we have a champion? Does St. Croix County have a champion, as you talked about?
I serve at the will.
Okay.
Supervisor Hanson.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna bristle, I'm bristling at the use of the idea that we just need education to come around. I was at the Committee of the Whole last fall and listened to the presentation by the consultant that we spent an enormous amount of money to retain. I did due diligence. I became educated, and I came to my opinion through the due diligence that I did, and chose not to become a champion. So there you have it.
With all due respect, and I certainly appreciate that ownership of it, but the sources of these types of posturing events that I've witnessed are people making statements, high-powered individuals, chiefs, of both EMS, fire, all EMS, fire, and law enforcement, questioning how somebody in Hudson can answer a 911 call from somebody in Ellsworth. Well, that answer is so simple, and yet that posturing and that lack of understanding is creating their resistance to it. So with all due respect to all of those sources, from a technology standpoint, it can be done. But from a will standpoint, that's where we have the struggle. The ownership of how that 911 center has to be placed in the county that it serves is, I think, an archaic mindset. And it's a mindset that technology now allows us to get beyond. But again, the will has to be there to get beyond it, and it's not.
Mr. Chairman, just to echo that a little bit, explain to the board what happened, what was it, last week, Casey, when, and it goes directly to Supervisor Ring's statement about partnering with neighboring counties. We had an incident a week ago or so where the Pierce and Dunn County dispatch centers went down. Casey can explain why. And each county serves as a backup to each other. In this case, the backup to the backup had issues. And so for a period of time, I think 72 hours or how many hours Casey can say, but our center was taking calls not only for St. Croix County, but for Pierce County and Dunn. So it was a real live example of it can be done. But it takes a lot of will by the end users and the elected officials and everyone combined to make it work. But Casey can speak to the specifics of the example I raised, but it not only addresses the idea of partnership, but it also addresses the fact that the technology is there. And then to also go back to an earlier point, this does not preclude St. Croix County from continuing to engage with River Falls, which we probably will continue to do. Casey?
Thanks, Pat. At 7:30 last Thursday evening, I was notified that the Pierce and Dunn County 911 centers, there was a fiber optic line which was severed between Eau Claire and Madison. It took out Pierce County's 911 system, and it took out Dunn County's 911 and administrative line system. Now, administrative lines are very important when it comes to alarm companies reporting. So anything out of county comes in on those administrative lines. So, in a sense, Dunn County was dead in the water besides their radio communications, and Pierce was down from a 911 standpoint. We are Pierce County's backup. Pierce County is Dunn County's backup. We thereby, from default, became Dunn County's backup. So we ended up with both county activities until the afternoon on Friday, so it was just short of 24 hours. But it proved that the system works from a technology standpoint. In fact, it was quite humorous during the course of the phone calls that we would have come in through Dunn and Pierce County, how my dispatchers take pride in the job they do, and heard, of course, those criticisms. How can someone in Hudson answer those calls from, well, we did. And it happens, and we rely on Pierce County to do the same for us should we experience an outage of that magnitude. But I think one of the things that proves how well it works is you didn't see one thing in the media about it. No offense to the media. But there wasn't any black helicopters, there wasn't any major circle the wagons were down. It was the fact that the backup systems work, and we were able to handle that increased load in our 911 center. We boosted staff, and it was flawless. There wasn't one citizen that went without service.
Yeah, Supervisor Kiesler first.
Just in terms of the resolution, I guess, I was on the Public Protection Committee when we began looking at this last term, and at the end of that term, I think we limited spending to $20,000, if I'm not mistaken, looking to other people that were on that committee. Now we have a resolution to stop something. I guess that's the problem I'm having, is why do we need a resolution to stop exploring it? Why don't we just not explore it anymore? You know, that's, I guess, why I'm not in favor necessarily of this resolution, because I think we should always be open to discussing partnerships and consortiums and collaborations. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are actively pursuing them, but in human services, we have collaborations and partnerships in economic support and in behavioral health, and throughout our system and county we have collaborations. We can do it technologically. We don't want to do it right now. I get it. Makes sense. Particularly if we don't have champions on both sides that are willing to move us forward. But to have a resolution to not do something, I guess, is the problem that I'm having, because it really seems to shut off open communication, because it says further actions. To me, actions mean everything. It means discussion, it means, you know, dialogue, it means overt and you know, objective, subjective kind of stuff. So anyway, that's just my comment. I'm confused as to why we need a motion to not do something that we don't want to do.
Supervisor Hanson was next.
I just wanted to clarify that the concern that I had wasn't the technology, it was the money. We're going to be an early adopter of this system. When there's just a few counties that have adopted this across the country, I think it would be nice if we watch this, if we stay adaptable and receptive to the idea. But if we do go through with this resolution to stop spending money, and in a few years, perhaps when it's been a more proven system in other places, we can buy it off the shelf instead of hiring consultants to come in and invent something for us. And that's my comment.
Supervisor Nelson.
Supervisor Kiesler, the reason we come up with the resolution is because I'm in the belief in this day and age, if it's not written down explicitly what you want, that sometimes there'll be gerrymandering and just kind of go and do what you want to do. So I thought it was important that we, as a committee, put together a resolution to say, or led by Chairman Brinkman, that this is exactly what our intent is. There's nothing saying you can't talk to people, but we're not going to spend money when they don't want to put any money in. And we're looking out for the taxpayers of the county. And at the process is, if they don't want to dance with us, well then, we'll go on to the next dance.
Supervisor Nielsen.
Just to go along with what Supervisor Nelson just stated, and respond to Supervisor Kiesler, you're right, we don't need a resolution in my belief either, but by doing a resolution, we are formally notifying the administration that we are not interested in furthering or continuing this process that's already been started. The administrator could do that on his own and report back to us. The board supervisor could also do it by telling the administrator. But this way, we're all involved, and it's a little bit more formal. That's all.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Berkey.
I'm just asking, because I think the piece that is critical here is on the state level in terms of legislation that may help with these kinds of projects in the future. In essence, if this is passed, I have a sense that there's a consensus that this is going to pass. What communication then will the Public Protection Committee and/or the 911 Center have with our legislators in Madison?
The plan in Madison right now, there's another set of bills up for consideration, is to actually address the entire 911 profession, where it's a crime that manicurists need more licensure than 911 dispatchers in the state of Wisconsin. So the state is starting to recognize the need for the overall reform, and part of that is the funding to put into it and redirect the funding from the general fund, which Governor Doyle allocated, and it still continues to be allocated to the general fund. That line item on your phone bill showing 911 fees or police and fire protection fees do not go to support the 911 industry. They go to bridge the gap in the general fund. So the reform includes legislation which will put that money back into the 911 industry, creating what we hope to be not only funding for mandates related to training, but also incentives related to mergers. So staying active at the state level is very important for the industry, which we are.
Okay. So a copy of this will go off to the, is that what the administration department or the county clerk's office will do?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no further discussion on the floor on this resolution, we had a motion by Supervisor Brinkman, second by Supervisor Nelson.
Supervisor Nelson, I need your second, please.
And we can vote on the resolution to discontinue further study of merger Pierce St. Croix County PSAP. So if everybody's ready, we can vote on that. One no, 15 yes, so it's passed. So we'll move on to the number 6 on the list, and that's a resolution to adopt resolution of ordinance cover sheet drafting the review policy, replacing resolution drafting the review policy adopted through the resolution number 662011. I'm not going to say it again. I need a motion.
I move to adopt.
To adopt. I have a second. Second from Supervisor Kiesler. Discussion? No discussion on the floor? If there's no discussion, we will vote on it then. Yeah. You have the second up there? So we'll vote. That was unanimous, all yeses. Thank you. We'll move on to number 7. resolution placing healthcare advisory referendum on the November 4th, 2014 St. Croix County ballot. Do I have a motion? Motion from Supervisor Babbitt.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend to the board that we adopt the resolution as written. This was forwarded to the board by the HHS board at their July 8th meeting.
Supervisor Schrockner, he seconds it. Discussion? Supervisor Babbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The HHS board spent some considerable time discussing this issue, which we realize in part is a political issue, but also a very real day-to-day concern for those individuals who are uninsured currently in our healthcare system. What we are doing here is recommending to the full board that we join more than 20 other counties in the state of Wisconsin in requesting that Madison reconsider its decision not to accept Medicaid funds from the federal government under the Affordable Care Act. I'd like to invite Department Head Johnson, if he would like to step up and add anything he would like to the discussion here. But I think this is an extremely important issue and something that we as a county can chime in on and join other counties in the state.
Okay, so we want Fred Johnson, if you want to come forward.
I won't add a significant amount. Dr. Babbitt, I think, covered the issue well, and this just allows a referendum question that could advise Madison, if you will, what St. Croix County residents feel about whether or not Wisconsin should accept federal funds for Badger Care. The only other comment I would make is when we discussed this, we looked at some preliminary information we had around the number of individuals that were now able to get Badger Care Medicaid services in Wisconsin due to the changes, expansion if you will, and there were 500 individuals in St. Croix County that now have Badger Care, primarily individuals that are childless adults. The second issue we looked at was how many people in terms of Badger Care were moved off Badger Care and need to now access health insurance through the exchange, through the Affordable Care Act. And there were about 1,000 of those individuals in St. Croix County that moved off Badger Care due to eligibility changes, basically income limit changes. And we don't have information yet on the number of those individuals that are still low income that have actually taken advantage of an opportunity, if they can afford insurance through the exchange. So we're waiting for that information on those 1,000 individuals, if you will. That's all I would add.
Thank you. Supervisor Nielsen had a question.
Yes, and it's my feeling that all the fellow supervisors here today should be against this. And the biggest, most obvious reason is that we're only telling the voters half the truth. If I can read the resolution so members of the public are aware of it. Shall the next state legislature accept available federal funds for Badger Care to ensure that thousands of Wisconsin citizens have access to quality and affordable health coverage? Well, that's only half the picture, and we're asking the people to vote on it. If they saw the whole picture and we added to this resolution or this referendum that they would have to give up subsidized insurance from the private sector access through the exchange. You see, if we go to Badger Care Medicaid, and Badger Care was 200%, it was reduced by our legislatures down to 100%. And in exchange for that, we gave those individuals access to the exchange and to get subsidized private insurance. And we're offering them more choices. And we're, instead of putting them into Medicaid and the public plan, we're giving them more options and we're giving them private insurance. And I recognize that it's not a one-to-one relationship, that there are people that drop out here and don't maybe qualify for either. But if you like what's going on in the VA health system, vote for this resolution and give it to the voters to vote on. The promises in this resolution as far as dollars, there's no guarantee that next year or in 2012 that the U.S. Congress is going to authorize that money. Medicaid, Medicare right now is one of the most deeply in debt entities in the country. And it's just, there's no guarantees involved here at all, and we should make sure that the public is aware of that before we ask them to vote and tell them only half the truth.
Supervisor Ring had a question first.
Yeah, I guess I have a question on, because when we put these numbers out there, the numbers are like fact, and I just want to be able to explain them if we do so. And we don't attribute these numbers. So we're saying that about $24,470 would come back into our economy. Is that through medical expenses? And then who help an additional 848 parents? Is that through 2021, or is it just for 1 year? Can you help me understand these numbers? Because it is, if it's supporting the point.
This resolution, we did some background check on those numbers, and the information I received, and I'll double check my notes, came from the State Legislative Fiscal Bureau.
And our local economy is St. Croix County.
I believe it was split out well, I'd have to double check the second whereas clause to be certain. I don't believe that would be 24 million specific to St. Croix County. Medicaid expenditures that have been reported previously are in the $50 to $60 million range in St. Croix County, so I would be hard pressed to immediately answer that another 24 million is coming into St. Croix County unless it is over a extended period of time through 2021. But I don't remember that specific detail off the top of my head.
Well, and I don't mean to bring it up as a detail, it's just that we need to be able to answer these, I think, to the public if we're putting it into a resolution. And the 848 is?
Again, the same information as I have.
The 1,000 that you mentioned?
Well, that is through the information is from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau as referenced in the first whereas.
Okay.
That's my recollection.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schachner.
Now we got in our packet today.
Mr. Schachner and Mr. Johnson, I'm holding in my hands the Legislative Fiscal Bureau dated December 16th, 2013 report, which specifically says, it refers to on page 5, that there's 848 total families affected, and the amount of revenue coming in through June 30th of 2021 is that quoted dollar amount, $24,470,000 that wouldn't be coming from federal support unless we do make this change. So as far as relying on the private subsidized system that Obamacare attempts to offer, but which our state has not had a very good track record in responding to. I have a son with a medical condition who right now we're paying over $450 a month for, and had we decided to live in Washington County, because there the state was very aggressive in getting bids from all the insurance companies, made them sit at the table, made them bargain with each other. Here I had one choice for a insurance company, so it's hardly a lot of choices. And the choice I did have was 3 times more expensive than Minnesota. So if we can cover 848 more families in our own county, bring in $24 million, sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
That is the document that I references, that we did reference in our background check as well. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had to look through my notes for that.
I got Supervisor Schachner here first. I've got to take your turn, so.
Besides handing out the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, I handed out 6 letters of support that have come along since I've asked that this be brought forward to the HHS and the full board. I think that us not accepting the funds is highlighted, and that we, as a state, took a step in the wrong direction when all we got to do is, especially in this county where we are a suburb of the Twin Cities, and we look across the pond or the river, and we see that our neighbors are paying a lot less for coverage, especially the low-income neighbors who would be able to take advantage of that type of a program. They're paying a lot less in coverage than the ones that we represent. And that needs to be addressed. Not accepting the Medicare funds has really hurt St. Croix County and really hurt this state. What this does, what this referendum does, is really get the voice of the people behind it. Because in all actuality, we could have ran something through that said, the St. Croix County Board says that we want you to take the funds. But instead of doing that, we're showing that we want the voice of the people to be heard. And that is where it is very important that we understand. On top of that, I have family who use the VA on a regular basis, and the mistakes of the few is just that. The VA that is representative of this area has been very good to the community, and its services have been outstanding. To try to put the mistakes of the few and ignore the positives that have actually been in this area and use them as an example is beyond reproach.
Supervisor Babbitt?
Just two brief points. I appreciate Supervisor Schachner's comment that what the resolution is attempting to do is to put the issue before the people, not to dictate to the people how they should vote or how they should feel about this issue. We certainly recognize that this is a very controversial issue. It's going to be one that's debated for probably a good time to come. Point number two, briefly, the fact of the matter is that taxpayers are paying a huge amount of money because there are so many uninsured individuals in our county who are accessing health care through the emergency room and through other means that end up costing all of us in this room a significant amount of money. Emergency rooms in our local hospitals are not the place to be providing services for most of these individuals. It costs the hospitals an enormous amount of money, and that translates into money out of all of our pockets. So I think all we really intended here to do was to allow the people of the county to make the choice.
Okay. Supervisor Hanson? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last spring, AARP magazine came out with an article which identified that it showed me that the Affordable Care Act divides the country into areas. St. Croix County is combined with Pierce County as an area of the marketplace. This area, Pierce and St. Croix County together, is the 5th most expensive area in the entire nation to buy coverage under the Affordable Care Act. The article came out, I believe, last April. If that's still current, and it probably is very close, we have pretty close to an obligation to the taxpayers and the citizens in our community to give them a voice, to let them decide if they want relief, and I support this motion.
President Nielsen?
I just recently retired from the VA, and we have the best VA health system in the country here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. If you're a veteran in Phoenix and you need major health services, you won't get it, period. Not in time. Now, I'd like to challenge the $24 million figure. That is the amount of Medicaid money that's out there that if nothing changes, can come into this county by 2021. That does not take into account the reduction in federal subsidies for private insurance that we are going to lose. Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements now have gotten so low. It's estimated that for doctors, physician services, it's about 2/3 of the cost of that doctor. You are not going to get the same service if you go with increasing Badger Care and relying on Medicaid. The intent of our legislatures at the state level was to try and give you choices. And I don't know how well that's worked, but if we're going to ask the citizens of this county to make that decision, let's tell them the whole truth, not just part of it.
Supervisor Stover.
Well, speaking of physicians, of those letters of support, I'm holding in my hands the endorsement from the American College of Physicians, the Wisconsin chapter, where they are recommending the support of this type of a referendum to the, actually, they're supporting not just a vote to the voters, a referendum, but instead they're supporting that the state go ahead and change its position and do receive the additional Medicare dollars. But since we're probably talking about a number, who else is in support here? Wisconsin Alliance for Retired Americans, the Wisconsin Council for Churches, the Wisconsin State AFL-CIO, and the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Those are some of the letters that are here in support.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? If not, we have a motion on the floor and a second motion from Supervisor Babbitt and second from need Supervisor Schachner to give this a second. And the resolution is placing health care advisory referendum on the November 4th, 2014 St. Croix County ballot. So if we're ready to vote, we can move forward. There's no more discussion. Thank you. That'd be 14 yeses and 2 noes. Thank you, that passed. We'll move on to number 8. Here we have a resolution approving alteration of supervisor district boundaries resulting from annexation to the village of Baldwin. I have a motion to take that to the floor. Supervisor Osnes' motion. I have a second. Supervisor Schachner's second. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, we'll vote on that resolution. And we had Supervisor Osnes with a motion and Supervisor Schachner with a second. We'll vote. Supervisor Verke, yours didn't. There we go. Thank you. That was all yeses. Thank you. We'll move on to number 9 on a resolution approving the alteration of supervisor district boundaries resulting from annexation to the city of River Falls. I have a motion. Supervisor Kiesler.
I move to second.
Second, Supervisor Verke, second. Any discussion? No discussion? We have the motion and the second up there, motion by Kiesler and second by Berkey, so we'll vote on that then. That was all yeses too, thank you. We have one left, which is a resolution approving the St. Croix Crossing Loop Trail operation and maintenance. Motion by Supervisor Ring and second by Supervisor Hanson. Any discussion on that, Supervisor Ring?
Yes, just to give a little background on this, so what we have today is a resolution approving the St. Croix River Crossing Loop Trail operations and maintenance. And this is something that's been in front of the Community Development Committee for maybe almost a couple of years now. So when DOT was here a couple months ago talking about the St. Croix River crossing, one of the things they talked about is a 4.8-mile trail that's going from Stillwater across the bridge and into Holton and back around, crossing over the old lift bridge. So I believe it was a couple years ago, the Department of Transportation indicated that, so as this trail was adopted as part of the Memorandum of Understanding between the two states, and the Department of Transportation did not want to own the facility, but they were looking for someone who would take over, or they did not want to maintain it, I should say. So they will continue to own a big part of it, but they're looking for someone to be the owner and operator. They talked to the town of St. Joe, who really considered it, is very interested in it, but thought they were not the best. They talked to DNR, and they talked to the Community Development Committee. We had someone from DOT talk to us about it. So there were some discussions, at which point the Community Development Committee said, yeah, under certain conditions, we would be willing to take that on, because we think it's a very important part of the infrastructure for St. Croix County. And we heard, so we had the administrator and our community development director went into negotiations with, okay, if we were to take this over, what would we get for taking on that burden? And what you have in front of you is the summary of that, the kinds of things. So they put some costs on it, and basically it adds up to about $200,000, and it's broken up three ways. But the things that they considered are looking at the maintenance, or the equipping it for what we want with things like pedestrian, with parking facilities, benches, rest areas, landscaping. And we also looked at replacement costs. What would the 20-year replacement cost? So they did a present value calculation on that kind of thing, and then there was some equipment that they looked at. So based on that negotiation, which was handled by our staff with the Department of Transportation, what you see in front of us is the agreement that is being recommended by the Community Development Committee. We also heard at our last meeting and at previous meetings from the St. Croix Bike and Pedestrian Coalition, was very supportive of the county taking over the operation and maintenance of that trail, just because it presents an opportunity for the county to build a trail system that will actually connect to this interstate trail system, which happens to be on the National Scenic Riverway. So that's a summary. And I'm sure Ellen Denzer is here. She could answer more detailed questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any Supervisor Osnes?
Don't give me that look, sir. I think this is probably for either Ellen or Tabitha. When I'm looking at the physical impact, we've got $3,000 per year. That's for that part-time seasonal employee. Is that correct? And then my second question on that, Ellen, is there any money available through the Riverway Mitigation Plan that could cover that expense?
No.
That was quick and short.
The money in the Riverway mitigation wouldn't be available for ongoing operation and maintenance, no.
Is that clear?
Any other questions?
Quit beating around the bush, Ellen.
Are there any other questions? No other questions?
Yeah. I don't have a question. I just ask that everyone support this. The county has put a lot of work into it. The Bike and Trail Pedestrian Coalition, which represents a lot of municipalities at this end of the county. The connectivity is just really important. It's quite exciting. So I'm voting yes.
Any other discussion, questions? And we have a motion on the floor. Supervisor Ring, Supervisor Hanson second that on the resolution of the St. Croix County River Crossing Loop Trail operation and maintenance. So we can vote at this time if everybody's done. That was all yeses. Thank you. We'll move on now to the clerk's report and correspondence.
I have no correspondence. Just a reminder on the WCA conference, if you're interested, let me know. I've registered those that have already expressed interest. Just let me know if you may still be interested in going. And just a reminder that we do have a partisan primary election next week, August 12th.
Thank you. Is there anybody else have any announcements? Sure, come on forward.
I just wanted to announce that, and perhaps Roger, you already have shared this with some people, but a few months ago, this board approved application for a transportation alternatives grant for doing a bike pedestrian plan. The grant was for $150,000. And 2 days ago, we got notice that St. Croix County has been awarded that grant.
Wow, thank you. That was great. Thanks, Ellen. Are there any other announcements anybody has? Nothing else? Thank you, everyone. Our meeting is adjourned.